welcome to the Quincy Access Television Studios. I'm Mark Crosby. Thank you for joining us for Update DPW, a seasonal look at your Department of Public Works. Joining me today is the recycling coordinator. He's new to the Department of Public Works. That would be Tom Henry. Glad to have Tom with us here today. We'll talk about recycling and what brought him here to the city of Quincy. And we will also talk about, as we normally do in a winter update, all the winter parking rules should we get snow. And we have already had snow actually in 2020. It's been pretty good as far as if you don't care for snow, it's been pretty good in 2021. But we, of course, there's February and there's March and even the possible April 1st snowstorm. So we will talk about that. But first, let's welcome Tom Henry, first time on Quincy Access Television.
Good morning, Mark. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. I know QATV plays a very important role in getting information out to the city residents. So I'm excited to be here. I know a lot of people are probably accustomed to seeing Mr. Sullivan, so I'll give you all the information you need.
Well, this is a nice change. Just don't tell him that. So you are the recycling coordinator. Talk about what brought you here. I mean, you have a history dealing with recycling.
I do, Mike. I've spent the last 13 years with Waste Management, which is the largest recycler in North America. And I dealt with a lot of their larger clients within the Northeast region. And what we would do is we would go in, kind of identify what they had going on for a recycling program and see how we could make it a little more robust. So we'd look at some of the things they were doing well and some of the things they were not doing so well and kind of bring them along to a point where they reached an acceptable level in their eyes so that their landfill waste diversion was acceptable to, to the establishment that we were servicing.
Recycling, needless to say, has changed dramatically. And why is that? Why are the recyclables more of a challenge as far as what is being accepted?
Yeah, to say that it has changed dramatically is an understatement, and I guess it's one of the nice things about you think you're an expert one day and that you know everything about it, and then the next day the rules of engagement have changed. So essentially, if we were to go back, and I'm going to estimate 10 years ago when single stream recycling was introduced to the community, it was brought out as the magic bullet that was going to increase recycling, reduce trash, and make things go away. Even the industry in itself kind of went out with some false information that just didn't work out. So they, a year or two in, started to identify some of the troubles with materials they had first said were going to be acceptable. And they had to readjust and go back and, take some of things out. I guess the example that everybody uses is plastic bags. Recycling does not belong in plastic bags. It belongs loose and dry in the receptacle. So even to this day, we still continue to struggle with people putting material in plastic bags. And in a city such as Quincy, where we're seeing so much growth and you have residents coming and going, it's important that as the recycling coordinator for the city, we get the information out that is necessary, needed for them to recycle right. So I think what you've seen, Mark, is that all of the major stakeholders, the Waste Management, the Covantas, the Casellas, they all got together with the Mass DEP about 2 years ago. And they said, instead of fighting with each other about, who accepts what, and why don't we come up with, full basic items that we can collect in a single stream container. So let's eliminate the wish recycling, and everybody wants to do as much as they can, but let's recycle what the facility is able to capture.
And talk about the market for recyclables changing dramatically as well.
Oh, sure. That's a big piece of it. So I often say that, people will put their recycling container at their end of the street, and when they come home from work at 6 o'clock, they just want it to be gone. So they don't really care what takes place after the fact. So it's put it out, make it go away, and they're happy. So there's much more to it from that. So then it goes to the MRF, the Material Recovery Facility. It's separated by commodity, and then it is sold in a secondary market. So it's sold as any other commodity is. So, for a while, the vast majority of your cardboard was going to China, and we ran into some issues there with the levels of contamination that we were shipping overseas. And they started to, say no. So then it eliminated some of the the places we had to bring these materials. So, now they're shipping to Indonesia, they're shipping to Vietnam. And I think the one good thing that may come from all of this is that, consumption of recyclable materials in the U.S. is increasing. They're building new factories that will be able to consume more of the material, and maybe we will get away from that export piece of it to the point where, a lot more will be staying stateside and processed domestically. But it's important for two reasons, because that drives the cost of a per ton recycling to the city. So they look at the blended value of all of the commodities. So you have your aluminum, you have your steel, you have your plastic, you have your paper, you have your cardboard. Each one of those commodities has a different price point. So they use a blended value to get to a price point where they determine how much the city is going to pay to have their material recycled. So, they conduct semi-annual audits of a truck specifically coming from Quincy, and they look at the quality of those materials, and then they determine what the residents are going to pay to the waste management who currently services our recyclables.
And talk about how the money is used, how
Correct.
It can benefit the community if people just recycle more and smart.
Right. So if we were to go back 5-6 years, there was a huge benefit to recycling because the blended value of the commodity exceeded the processing cost. So the city was in a position where they would be rebated per ton for the recyclables that were collected. It has now gotten to the point where a ton of recycling costs every bit as much, if not more, than a ton of MSW. So your trash and your recycling are just about dead even right now at a per ton charge. So, it's important. It was nice when we were getting some money for it. It was nice when it was helping to offset the cost. But at the same time, we can't, diminish the impact on the environment and the importance of recycling. So as much as the economics play an important role in recycling, you always have to look at the environmental piece of it as well.
I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what I was thinking. It's simply the right thing to do for the environment, and we all benefit when the environment is healthy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another thing that you have to look at is, during this pandemic, so many more people are working at home right now, so that the impact on the city from a waste and recycling standpoint, we've seen a pretty substantial increase in the volume that we're collecting. So, you look just this past Christmas, how many Amazon boxes you saw on people's sidewalk on a regular basis. So, we're collecting a lot more. The vendor that we use to collect our material has been up to the task. That it's a very important. You talk about essential services, collecting your trash and recycling from your curbside is every bit, as essential as your grocery worker and as some of the other key positions. And, we're thankful that they've been able to maintain some good service and provide the service that the residents expect.
Absolutely. And talking about the pandemic, let's talk about the pandemic and wipes, because wipes have confused people over time. Sometimes some of the packaging said that wipes were in fact flushable. Talk about that, because that's not the case.
Yeah, no, those are probably the worst thing that you can flush down your toilet. Something that's used quite frequently now, and they should absolutely positively not be flushed down your toilet because the likelihood that they will eventually clog up your drain and lead to some type of disaster in your home is pretty good. So not only does it impact the city's lines, but it could come back to haunt you as well. So please keep your wipes out of your drain and your toilet. So uh, we don't need that.
And talk too about fats, oils, and grease, and that's another potential hazard. Those should not go down the drain.
Absolutely not. Keep them separated. Pour it into a can, keep it at the side of your sink, let it harden, and then put it in your trash. We do not want any of those solids going down your drain. And you as a resident, you don't want that because it's going to lead to future trouble, future expenses, and cause you some headaches. So keep those out of there.
And what about when you're recycling the items that are recyclable, the importance of cleaning those out before you put them in the bin?
Yeah, it's important. We want you to rinse them out for a couple of reasons. Number one, the processors, the end users of the material, they would like it to be as clean as possible. So when they start to recycle it into new material, they're not dealing with a lot of food waste. And then secondly, just for sanitary purposes, when you're putting it out, whether it's squirrels or raccoons or whatever, you don't want that food waste getting out onto the street and causing some other health issues. So important that you clean them out. I don't think you're not always going to get that last scoop of peanut butter out of the bottom of the jar, but if you can give it a quick rinse before you throw it in your bin, it's certainly appreciated.
If you have a dog, there's potential for the dog to lick the peanut butter jar, but if you don't,
that'll keep the dog busy for a while.
Yeah. I guess if folks have general questions, is this recyclable, is this not recyclable, what could they do?
They can always call the DPW. So I'm always happy to accept calls. You can go to our website, and it has a pretty clear description of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So we would prefer that you ask prior to putting it out than not posing the question. So we tend to get a lot of calls about bulky items, refrigerators, washers, dryers, air conditioners, things of that nature, and that does require a second step because we recycle those via a separate vehicle. So we dispatch a vehicle on the day of your trash day to pick up those types of items. But always feel free to give me or John a call down at the DPW. That's what we're here for. And if we don't have an answer, we'll find an answer for you. Also, the Mass DEP has a pretty good website where you can go into Recyclopedia and simply type in an item, and it'll tell you what the proper way to dispose of that item is.
If we could, Tom, just go over some of the contact information, maybe the best number to reach you at, an email possibly, and of course the City of Quincy website is quincyma.gov.
That's correct, and mine is thenry@quincyma.gov. So if you wish to contact me by email, that is the best way to get a hold of me. And then 617-376-1954 is my direct line. Always feel free to call me on that line as well. So, that not only does that line serve as a place where people can ask questions, but if people have problems. So if for some reason their trash is skipped, their recycling is missed, what we like to do and what we're looking to even improve on is to we want to make sure that we're getting as much bang for our buck from the vendor that's providing our service. So if we see something where there are habitual misses in certain areas, we want to know about it so that we can track it and we can go back to them and say, okay, we've got a problem. What can we do? So we're looking to even further the technology on that, Mark, so where each one of the vehicles that they put onto the city streets will have GPS that we can access so that we kind of know where their trucks are. So if they tell me there are going to be 4 capital waste trash trucks and 3 capital waste recycling trucks out on any particular day, we'll be able to map and plot where they've been and where they have not been. So as I get calls in saying there was a miss or they chose not to pick it up because it was not an acceptable item, we can improve with technology how the service is put out there. So, and they're really our first line of defense to preventing contamination. So they're picking it up off the sidewalk and throwing it in the back of the truck. So if they're throwing things in the back of the truck that don't belong, that's an issue. So we're hoping to get the lines of communication open so that they know if there's something out there, maybe you leave it, maybe the resident then calls and says, hey, I left a kid's plastic playset on the sidewalk and they didn't pick it up. So it becomes a teaching moment. So we're not looking to penalize people for putting things out that, that didn't belong in the recycling. So we just kind of inform them and we pass the message along as far as what we're looking, and then we give them a secondary outlet for where that material could possibly go.
We will on screen momentarily have the number to capital waste. And as you had mentioned earlier, appliances are picked up curbside. They do need to call, a resident does need to call prior to their trash day, however.
That is correct. Yes. And, that service it's a very good service that the city offers. I know you said you're going to put the number up, 617-376-7556. Please take advantage of it. I mean, when I look at, having dealt with other municipalities in my prior life, and I look what the city of Quincy offers its residents from a trash collection standpoint and all of the services that are provided, we're really fortunate to live in a city that takes care of as much material as we do.
So appliances, computer monitors, I believe, as well?
Correct. Computer monitors, old televisions. Televisions have become a throwaway item. People don't get TVs repaired anymore when you can go out and get them for relatively short money. So we were joking down in the backyard how just this past month the TV collection area has become pretty crowded, and I'm imagining it's because of the number of new TVs that were purchased at Christmas.
Oh, correct. I remember the days when the TV repairman would come to the house and replace the tube.
Right.
Now they don't have tubes.
Same days when you had to get up and click the channel instead of push the remote.
True. One question, we talk about recycling. I know you had a curbside collection of Christmas trees. Now, my mom lives in the city of Quincy. She's a resident, and she keeps her tree up through Little Christmas. So she has actually missed the collection. What could she do?
She could give us a call. We will certainly make arrangements to pick up. It's funny the way Christmas fell this year and over the weekend, and usually we pick up the 2 weeks directly after. And I think originally the thought was to wait another week before we started collection, but ultimately we decided to go with those 2 weeks. But if somebody has an issue with that, give us a call. We'll make arrangements to pick it up, just given the circumstances. I think we have a lot of people that do leave their trees up for Little Christmas. And I think Sully and I even had that discussion when we were mapping out the calendar. So she could give us a call and we'll take care of her.
Very good. Thank you.
We'll take care of any resident for that matter.
Thank you. One of the things, I know my wife we put our Christmas tree up. It wasn't a real tree, but she put it up at the beginning of November. And the reason being is that this pandemic has really brought a lot of people down. So holiday lights have been a way to kind of cheer people up. So you can understand maybe why people might be hanging on to their trees longer than normal.
Absolutely. I know we talked a little bit earlier about the hazardous waste days that we have here at the city. And this past year, the 2 events that we had in a pandemic year, the volume of material that we collected, because so many people had time to clean out their garages, clean out the corners of their basement of, chemicals and paints and oils that they've had there for years. It was really something. So
Yeah, totally understood. I certainly, I was one of those that did some extra cleaning I wouldn't have done simply
Yeah.
because there was no place to go, and there was certainly plenty of time. I do want to talk about the winter. I had talked about the winter parking rules. Right now, we are in a warming trend. I think it might be about 40 degrees the day of this taping, but you and I know New England is forever changeable, so we could have a storm in a couple days. So talking about, and the last storm we had in 2020 did dump quite a bit of snow in the city of Quincy. So if you could, in order for the streets to be cleaned, if you could just go over the parking rules for 2021.
Sure. So when there is a snow emergency, the snow emergency, when it's announced, you can access that information a couple of ways. You can call into the city at 617-770-7669. You can access Quincy Access Television, obviously. You can go to the city's website at quincyma.gov, and you can receive alerts, whether you want to via email or whatever, to get that information. So, parking, if the emergency is issued, it's on the even side of streets this year. One thing I'll say, Mark, is that when I first came on to the job in June, I happened to be walking by the superintendent's office, and I went in, and it was late July, and they were sitting having a meeting about orchestrating snow removal for the upcoming season. I as a new staff,
Right.
thought that was unusual. I said, we just got through the 4th of July, and here you are planning for snow removal for the upcoming year. So, the professionalism of, the commissioner, the superintendent, and the staff all the way down through, having worked for a Fortune 200 company and then to come in as a public servant, I mean, they have nothing over the staff that we have here at the DPW. These people come in each and every day, they work hard. And I think that just highlighted, when I saw them planning for snow removal in a year with a pandemic, that they were starting in July. So I think when you saw this last storm that we had, it was a substantial storm. It was over 10 inches of snow. It was all hands on deck. They put it out, and I think it went very well. It was the first major storm of the year, and that prior preparation, for them being able to deploy, a couple hundred people to go out and to plow the city streets. Typically they would all maybe meet at a certain point, but you couldn't congregate at a certain point this time because of the number of people, because of the pandemic. So they had to find a way to disseminate all the information to get out who was covering where, and to still operate as a team. So I think, these guys should be proud for how they handled it and how they made it work. So it was a well-oiled machine for the first major storm of the year in a year with a pandemic.
Certainly, and I'm surprised too that discussion started in July, but it makes sense.
Yes. Now it makes sense to me. Back then I was a little bit saying, wow, these guys take it serious if they're talking snow in late July.
Speaking of taking it seriously, the winter here in Quincy, the roads are actually prepped prior to snow falling.
Correct. That's something new that you see, where they'll go in and they'll put down a saline solution to help with the melting prior to any snow accumulating on the street. So that's relatively new, but it's something that I think has been deemed to be very, effective and helps to get people home early on in storms so that they can get home safely. I think a lot of people, have stayed home. They heed the advice of the local weathermen, and I think a lot of employers throughout the Commonwealth are good about it now, saying, let's not put the danger of our employees at risk. Let's keep them home if we're expecting a major storm. So I know with trash and recycling, the day before we made a decision that as big and heavy as those trucks are, they become sleds when the streets get a little slick. So we made a decision to call off and put a delay on the trash and collection, the collection of both trash and recycling. So I know we contacted you folks and through the various websites, we got the information out, and it was well received.
Well, we should mention you had, I believe, mentioned city alerts. Folks can sign up for notifications for alerts through the City of Quincy, and they can
That's
find
right.
out about various information from the Department of Public Works. Specifically,
know-
right now, we're talking about snow, but I mean, they could find out simply anything through that channel.
That is correct. Go to quincyma.gov, they go to MyQ, and they can just register on there to get the information that they're looking for. So it's a nice tool to have. And,
As we close this program, just a couple minutes left, just some other activity that the Department of Public Works is working on throughout the city.
Well, one of the major projects that has been going on down at Ward 1 is the rebuilding of the seawall. And, that's making great progress. I don't know if you've driven down there recently. It really looks nice. It's going to, provide additional protection for the residents down there to avoid street flooding. The weather has cooperated pretty much so far this year. So, they continue to forge ahead. And I think everybody is pleased with the progress that they're making down there. With regards to street work, it's always on the list is never ending, and it's something that they take very seriously. So they just when the weather's right, they're out getting it done.
Well, Tom, I want to thank you for joining me in your debut on Quincy Access Television. A lot of information was given out to folks today, and certainly look forward to working with you in the months to come.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. It's my pleasure to be here with you. I know I have some big shoes to fill in Sully's absence, but anytime I'm here at the ready.
Very good. We're glad to hear that. And once again, thank you, Tom, very much.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Have a good day.
You too. And thank you at home for watching. This has been a program of Quincy Access Television and the Department of Public Works. Please continue to watch QATV for more locally produced programming.